Kiddushin Daf contains two primary sugyas. The first is the sugya of mitzvah to say shaloi hazman grama, that women are chayiv, and how we know that halacha. We're going to have to work that out according to a number of different opinions. We'll have a brief interlude, and then our last sugya will be that of hakafas harosh and giluach hazakan, the cutting off payos and cutting off a beard, whether that is or those issues apply to women and the sources that we have for that halacha. So let's begin. The Gemara has been discussing mitzvahs that say hazman grama. We're looking for sources that women are pater on those mitzvahs. Now we're discussing mitzvahs that say shaloi hazman grama. That is mitzvahs that are aseh and are not time bound. They can be done at any time. What is the source that women are chayavos in that? So we're going to have 5 examples of mitzvahs that say shaloi hazman grama. The mitzvah of yiras ha'av, which is they are chayavos in. The mitzvah of Talmud Torah, which they're paturos in. These we all know from previous limudim the Gemara has had on the last few daf. Pru'ervu is a machlokes, whether they are chayavos or paturos. And then Pidin Ben, which they are most certainly paturos on. Those are going to be the 5 which we will discuss, and we'll discuss which ones to learn from. Now we're going to have 2 approaches here. The first is Mamatzinu and Shnei Ksuvin. Mamatzinu is where you find one halacha, you could assume it applies somewhere else, unless it's written a second time. Then we say Shnei Ksuvin appears twice, and that's to limit it only these 2 places and not anywhere else. It's an opinion that you could also learn from 2 to everywhere else until you have 3, then you can't learn to everywhere else. So these are the concepts that we're going to be juggling as we try to figure out the source of the halacha, that women are paturos on mitzvahs hasei, that women are chayavos, that is on mitzvahs hasei shaloi hazman grama. So the Gemara begins by saying we learned from Amar Av, which again we've seen earlier, all these, what they are chayavos on, what they are paturos of. And we do a mamatzinu binyan from Amar Av to the rest of Kol HaTorah Kula, they're chayavos in Amar Av, and therefore they should be chayavos in all mitzvahs hasei shaloi hazman grama. The Gemara asks, why don't you learn the opposite from Talmud Torah, that we know that they're paturos, and the Talmud Torah, again we've seen the source earlier, and therefore you should learn from there to everywhere else that they are paturos and mitzvahs hasei shaloi hazman grama. The Gemara answers because you have pru'ervu, and therefore pru'ervu also is a mitzvah to say shalei hazman grama, and they are paturos. So you have 2 that they are paturos in, and you say shnei ksuvim bank echad ein malamdim, everywhere else they are chayavos. So Gemara asks, what about according to Rabbi Yechon ben Breiko holds that they are chayavos and pru'ervu? So then you can't say that it's shnei ksuvim bank echad ein malamdim. So Gemara says, okay, so I'll have a different mitzvah. I have Pidin Ben. Pidin Ben, they are also chayavos on, they are also paturos on, even though it is mitzvah, and it's a mitzvah to say shaloi hazman grama, and therefore Talmud Torah and Pidin Ben are shnei ksuvim bank echad and ein malamdim. So the Gemara says, hold on a second, but I have 2 sets of shnei ksuvim bank echad. According to Rabbi Yechon ben Breiko, I have pru'ervu, that they are chayavos in, and moira, that they are chayavos in. So I have 2 that they are chayavos in. I should say shnei ksuvim bank echad, and everything else they're paturos. And I have Talmud Torah and Pidin Ben that they are paturos on, and I should say shnei ksuvim bank echad, and everything else they are chayavos. So how do I know which shnei ksuvim bank echad to use? So Gemara answers, the one of Meir and Pru'ervu that they're chayavos doesn't count as shnei ksuvim bank echad, because neither of them is extra. Shnei ksuvim bank echad only works if the Torah didn't have to say the second one, because I can learn it from the first one. Here, if I would have only said either of those 2, I would not know the other one. If I would have only said the mitzvah of Pru'ervu, I would not know that they're chayavos in yiras ha'av. And the reason is because yiras ha'av, they are not sipek b'yadam. They can't do yiras ha'av. They have a husband that they have to have meira for him. And therefore, even though they may not have a husband, if they're single, the entire mitzvah of yiras ha'av doesn't apply, because it's overridden by yiras ha'bal. Now, if I would have just said, however, the mitzvah of Meir Av, I would not have been able to learn that they are chayavos and pru'ervu, at least according to Rabbi Yechon ben Breiko that they are, because then the Torah commands pru'ervu, would use the word kivshua, to conquer the land. Women aren't usually a conquering force, and therefore I would think that just like kivshua doesn't apply to them, the rest of that shouldn't apply to them either. Therefore, those 2 are not shnei ksuvim bank echad, and I would say shnei ksuvim bank echad only on Talmud Torah and Pidin Ben that they're paturos, and learn that everything else they are chayavos. Okay, that's the Gemara's source. The Gemara now says this all only works according to the Mani Amar shnei ksuvim bank echad ein malamdim. But if you say shnei ksuvim bank echad milamdim, that you could go further. So now, what is my source that women are chayavos? Mitzvah say shalei hazman grama Talmud Torah and Pidyon Aben are only two, and we would say melamdim. I should learn from Talmud Torah and Pidyon Aben that they are paturos in every mitzvah say shalei hazman grama. So therefore, because of this, kasha, the Gemara says we're going to have to give a whole new source for the concept of zman grama and lei hazman grama. All that we learned so far was only b'teres mamen sinu shnei ksuvin, and now we're stuck because our shnei ksuvin and our mamen sinu, we have sources either way, and we don't have mekayres enough because they conflict each other. So therefore, we're going to come with a hekesh. Once you have a hekesh, that'll teach me all the halachas we need in one shot. So the Gemara quotes the Pepunoi, the people of a place called Pepuna, which Rava says is Rav Acha Bar Yaakov, and he says the hekesh is as follows. It says about tefillin, and then right afterwards it says in order that the Torah of Hashem should be in your mouth. So you see, we talk about all of Torah Hashem right after tefillin. So the connection between tefillin and the rest of the Torah. Therefore, just like women are peturos in tefillin, as we've learned earlier, a few daf earlier, they are also peturos in kol Torah kula, in anything which is like tefillin, that it is a mitzvah saseh shehazman grama. And since you need a hekesh, this wouldn't work for a mamatzina, but since now we're discussing hekesh, since you need a hekesh, that the Torah to go out of its way and write something specifically to teach me that women are peturos in mitzvah saseh shehazman grama, obviously a mitzvah saseh shaloi hazman grama the chayavosin. If they were peturos in that, then I wouldn't need any makar that they're peturos if it's zman grama. And that teaches me both that zman grama they're peturos and shaloi hazman grama they are chayavos. Says the Gemara, that's all very good, assuming that tefillin is really a mitzvah saseh shehazman grama. However, that itself is a machlekes. It's a machlekes in Maseches Eruvin and in other Masechtes. So, therefore, you can't say this according to everybody. What are you going to do according to the opinion that tefillin is a mitzvah saseh shalei hazman grama, that it applies in all times? You're not going to be able to use tefillin as a makar, and therefore we're back searching for makars. The Gemara says, who's the one who holds that way? That's Rabbi Meir. And Rabbi Meir conveniently holds shnei ksuvim hapoyin ke'echad ein melamdim, and therefore our whole first approach using mamatzin or shnei ksuvim works. So therefore we don't need tefillin. So the Gemara says, okay, that's great according to everyone except Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yehuda holds of both problematic shitos. He holds shnei ksuvim hapoyin ke'echad melamdim, therefore he can't use the first approach, and he holds that tefillin is a mitzvah saseh shaloi hazman grama, so he can't use the second approach. So the Gemara says we're going to revive an old approach we had on the last daf, that you have three mikayros, that women are chayavos in a mitzvah saseh shehazman grama, matzah, simchan, sukkis, and hakel. We had some discussions whether you could use all three before. Now we're going to say that Rabbi Yehuda holds you could, even though we said that other opinions you can't. Rabbi Yehuda will hold that you could, and therefore there are shloshik ksuvim hapoyin ke'echad, and therefore you definitely say ein melamdim, and therefore all other mitzvahs to say shehazman grama, they will be peturos in. The Gemara now refers back to the Mishnah for a brief discussion of a mitzvah l'isaseh. The Mishnah said that women are chayavos in all mitzvahs l'isaseh. What's the source for that? So the Gemara brings one short makar. Rabbi Yehuda says in the name of Rav, and as a Tanat Rabbi Shmuel, the pasuk says isha ki yas mekachatei sa'adam, puts together a man and a woman for all punishments in the Torah, for all l'isasehs, and whatever punishment you get because of them, and therefore she's equal to men in all of these things. Now, tangentially, the Gemara brings other things where the Torah puts women together with men and similar kind of things. And we're going to discuss Einchin, which is Leisa says we've just said. Now I want to talk about halachos of monetary issues, Chayshim Mishpat. I want to talk about halachos that are chayavos, where there's an Einish Misa, or there's a concept of Misa involved. So as far as Mishpatim, in Parshas Mishpatim it says, before them, plural, that is equalizing men and women for all the halachos of monetary issues that the Torah has. The Bechizki also adds, it says, Vehemis ish or isha, any type of killing which involves a man or a woman, whether it's murder of a man or a woman, or when an animal accidentally kills a man or a woman and the owner has to make kaifer, all those halachos are equal. The murderer doesn't make a difference who he killed, and the ox the owner of the ox doesn't make a difference who the ox killed. They all apply. Says the Gemara, why do you need all these three things to tell me that they apply equally to men and to women? Can't they learn one from the other? So the Gemara says no. If you would have only said the first one, Einchin, I would think that there the women have it as well because they deserve kapara, just like everyone else. They deserve an atonement, and punishments are an atonement. However, as far as dinim, they should apply to mishpatim, perhaps not. Perhaps it only applies to men because they're in the marketplace. Women aren't. Now, if I would have said dinim, I would think that applies to women because otherwise, how are they going to survive if they don't have laws of monetary ownership and all those things? They don't own things. They should be vulnerable to people stealing from them or anything like that. That can't be. Therefore, the halachas of mishpatim would apply to them. But to say that Einchin apply to them, no. Maybe Einchin only apply to men that are mechuyev in mitzvahs or in more mitzvahs. How do we know that applies to women as well? Now, if I would have only said that of Misa issues, maybe that's much stricter because it involves loss of life. However, Dinim and Neshama and Einchin Kapara, I would know that that applies to them. Therefore, I need all three of these to be written. Now, the Gemara refers back to the Mishnah, and we begin our last sugya, and that is that the Mishnah lists 3 lav and 3 yisurin that don't apply to women. They are a female kohen has no iser to become tamei meis. All women have no iser of rounding out the corners of the head. That is what we call cutting off the payas. They don't have to worry about their haircut. And they also have no issur of shaving a beard. Should they have a facial hair, they have no issur to shave it off in any way they want. So the Gemara wants to know, how do we know the halachas of all these 3 things? So the Gemara says, as far as being matame to mesim, that's simple. The Torah says, Emor lakana b'nei Aaron, command this to the sons of Aaron. It only applies to the sons of Aaron, not to the daughters of Aaron. Now, how do you know that the issur of leisakif, of rounding out the head, cutting off the payas, doesn't apply to them? So Gemara says that's linked to Bal Tashchis. That's Bal Tashchis Pa'as Zikenecha. And therefore, just like the Isser of shaving the beard doesn't apply to them, the Isser of cutting the hair of the head round doesn't apply to them. Now, here, however, we're going to have much more of an issue. Although the Leisakifu and Leisashches are put together in the pasuk, and therefore we know that you could link the two of them together. How do we know Leisashches? How do we know that the Isser of shaving the beard doesn't apply to women? This is going to be a more complex sugya, which will take us to most of the daf. So Gemara first gives a simple svara. The Gemara says most women don't have a beard; they don't have any facial hair, and therefore it's logical that this shouldn't apply to them. The second source the Gemara wants to bring is because it says loisa kifu pa'az rashechem v'leisashches pa'az zikenecha. Most of this is written in plural. When it says you do not plural round out the corner of your heads plural, but then when it talks about the beard, it says you singular leisashches should not cut off the corners of your beard singular. So why does it change? Obviously, to exclude, here it's only singular, only applies to one, only applies to a man. It doesn't apply to a woman. So the issue is only on men and not on women. And that's a source, a simple source, no issues. The Gemara now is going to bring that there's a brisa which contradicts our Mishnah. There's a brisa that seems to say that women do have an isser of hashchasas hazakin. They do have an isser of shaving off the beard. And the Gemara is going to change pshat in the Mishnah, but along the way it's going to come up with a whole new source that women don't have an isser in shaving the beard, and the Gemara will challenge that as well. So the brisa the Gemara brings says as follows: the beard of a woman and of a sris, that's a man who never develops, that they have some hair, however, so it counts as a beard for all the halachos. That's all the brisa says. The Gemara says you see from there that a woman's beard counts as a beard, and therefore it should be also for her to shave that beard off. Now the Gemara is going to say we're not talking about shaving; we're talking about mitzayir. We're going to get to that later. But now the Gemara brings that this is the stira. It clearly shows that a woman should have an answer to shave her beard. So that's a contradiction. So the Gemara answers, Abaye says this Mishnah cannot be talking about as far as shaving. And in order to say that, he brings a whole source that there is no isser for a woman to shave her beard if she has one. And he brings a whole new source. Now, the Taisus discusses why he needs a new source. What's wrong with our old source? But he brings a new source. So let's see the new source and the Gemara's discussion on it. So the source that Abaye brings is as follows. The Torah discusses the Isser of cutting the payas and the beard twice. Once by Yisraelim and once by Kaihanim. And he used the word Pa'as by both. And therefore we have a hekesh between the Isser of Kaihanim and the Isser of Yisraelim. It says Abaye, you could learn therefore from Kaihanim to Yisraelim. Next step is that by Kaihanim, it's going to apply clearly only to men and not to women, because like we said before, it says Emer Lakanim B'nei Aharon. And then it discusses Tumah and all these halachos. So Abaye wants to say that when it says B'nei Aharon, it's referring to all the halachos, and therefore women are excluded from all the halachos of Kahanim. And then when it says Pa'as, it uses that word both by Kahanim and Yisraelim. I see that women are excluded not only by Kahanim, but also by Yisraelim. And therefore, that is my source that the Isser of Leisakifu and Leisashchis is said by Kehanim only to women, and by Yisraelim, therefore also, it's also women only. So now the Gemara challenges the step that when it says by Kehanim, B'nei Aharon is referring not only to Tumah, but also to the Isser of shaving and haircut. The Gemara says, if you want to say that that's referring to everything, so why do I need a hekesh to apply it to Yisraelim? I could apply that to Yisraelim on my own with a kal v'chomer. That I could say that if it doesn't apply to women by kohanim, which have a lot of mitzvahs, and still these don't apply to women. So Yisraelim, which have fewer mitzvahs, certainly they won't apply to women. So why do we need Gzera Shava for that? Says the Gemara, because maybe I would think that when it says B'nei Aharon, it's not referring to the hair cutting. It's only referring to the halacha of Tumah. Now, having a Gzera Shava, so that tells me the Gzera Shava is be teaching me something. What's it going to be teaching me if the halachos of Tumah, if the B'nei Aharon is only referring to Tumah and not to the haircut? So what is this Gzera Shava of Pa'as for? Linking Yisraelim and Kaihanim for the halacha of shaving? What do I learn from that? Obviously, then, it must be that the limitation to men and not to women was said by hair cutting also, not just by Tumah, and therefore the Gzera Shava is a function to teach me that applies by Kahanim as well, that applies by Yisraelim as well. So the Gemara says the problem is that there's a different function for what that Gzera Shava could be for, and we have that a brisa that teaches me what that Gzera Shava is for. It's not extra. And you can't say that that's how you know that the halacha of B'nei Aharon and not B'nai Aharon is referring to hair cutting. Because maybe it's referring to only Tumah. What's the Gzera Shava for? It's teaching me totally different halacha. So teach me something about the parsha by Yisraelim to Kahanim, something by Kahanim to Yisraelim. Because by Yisraelim it uses the term sashchis, and Mekahanim uses the term giluach. Sashchis means destroying completely down to the skin, and giluach means shaving with a knife, with a scissor, as opposed to a cream or something else. And I apply them each to each other with this Gzera Shava, and I say that you apply that shaving, you learn from Kahanim, applies to Yisraelim as well. The Yisr is only if it's in a shaving way with scissors. And destruction, Tashchis, which it says by Yisraelim, applies to Kahanim as well. The only thing that's also for both of them is something which is real hashchasa down to the skin, and it's also giluach. So therefore, what we have now is that the kasha is that this Gzera Shava is a function, and therefore, how do you know that when it says the B'nei Aharon is applying to hair cutting and not only to Tumah? The Gemara answers there are two Gzera Shavas here. It says Pa'as twice in the pasuk about Yisraelim. One is for the drasha you just said, and the other one is for what we are saying. Now, and that's the extra one where we could prove that the when it says Bekahanim B'nei Aharon is referring to everything, even the haircutting. Where does it say Pa'as extra again? Because it says Leisakifu Pa'as Roishchem, Leisashchis says Pa'as Zekinecha. It shouldn't say that. It should just say Leisakifu Pa'as Roishchem, Leisashchis Es Shebezekinecha. Why do you have to say Pa'as again? And therefore that is extra. Okay, so therefore we've proven that it's not. We have another drasha, we have another source that you can't possibly say that it's also for a woman who has a beard to shave it. So what then is the brisa teaching me when it says that a woman's beard has the halach of a beard? So it says it's teaching me in Hilchos Negaim, a nega on a on a skin surface has different halachos than a nega on a hairy surface. And it's teaching me that if a woman has a beard and she has a nega in that spot, it has the halacha of a nega of a beard and not a nega of skin. So Gemara says that. It says in the Torah straight out. It says, Isha Yisha ki yibay nega beroish lebezakon. So it says clearly that it's the same for a man and for a woman. So the Gemara says, okay, no. So it's talking about a different halacha. It's talking about taharas negayim, that you have to shave off everything. So the Gemara says that's not a chiddush either. A woman has negayim, she becomes tamei, so she has tahara, and the same procedure should apply to her. So Gemara says, okay, no. So we'll go back to our first answer, and that's what it said. Isha ki by nega b'roish bezakon. I wouldn't know that it's ish or isha for both the nega roish and the nega zakon. I don't think it's isha b'roish, but just ish for the zakon when it's in the beard is just a man, and therefore I need this brisa to tell me that a woman's beard has taharas, has the dinim of tsaras as a beard as well. Okay, the Gemara now moves on to discuss another opinion that there is another Isser law that does not apply to women. And this is the opinion of Isi, and he holds that the Isser of Bal Yikrchu doesn't apply to women. So the Torah says that as part of our morning procedure, we have two Isurim. We should not shave bald spots in our head, and we should not cut ourselves. Those are two practices of the Emiri, and we are forbidden to do each of those. And the pasuk that says that, it says, "Baram atam Hashem lekechem, loises koidedu, loises simu karcha beinechem lemeis, ki am kadesh ata laHashem elekecha." So it says two isurim, loises koidedu and loises simu karcha. Now, it also says two things which are contradictory indications as to whether this applies to women. On the one hand, it says, which would imply that it applies only to men and not to women. On the other hand, it says, your holy nation, which implies the entire nation, including women. So does it apply to men or does it apply to women? It says, Isi, the Isser of Karcha applies to men only and not to women. This Isis applies to women as well. And therefore, Karcha is learned from Abanamat Hashem Lekechem. Is learned from Kadeshata, Ki Am Kadeshata. Says, how do you know which one is which? So Gemara says, because Gidida, the cutting applies in a place of hair and in a place where there's no hair. So it's more common and applies all over, and therefore it should apply in more circumstances, and it should apply by men and by women. However, not to make spots in your hair, that is limited only to hair areas, and therefore it should be limited only to men and not to women as well. So the Gemara says, well, maybe both of them apply only to women, and Am Kadeshat Hashem applies to a different halacha, the halacha of srita, that you're not allowed to scratch. So the Gemara says, Isi holds scratching and cutting is the same. He doesn't have those views as separate isurim. They both go on the Lois Eskai to do, and they can't have different halachas.